why do you make art that could be classified as interior design?
I used to always explain it this way, that it had to do with my undergraduate school experience and being taught that serious art couldn't also function as decoration in a home. Like there's a big difference between art that people have in their homes and art that you see in a museum. And I just always found that kind of, I had a problem with that, and I thought, it just made sense to me that people wanted pretty pictures in their home, and that you would somehow want the art in your home to go along with the furniture, or it just didn't seem like it seemed like a weird split to me that I decided I wasn't going to.
So you always were kind of this mindset that art should probably match the couch?
When I was an undergrad, I tried to make, serious paintings, and they were really embarrassing and angsty, and, like copying Francis Bacon and copying the new German expressionists that were really big at the time, and they just were never very good paintings. And I seemed to have a problem if I was thinking about, like, I'm sitting down to make art now, and it would kind of like block me in a way, or I would end up making something that was really stilted and just not very successful. But I kind of realized if I took off that pressure or that kind of dictum that that's what I was going to do, and I was just like, I just want to make something that's like something else, then it turned out to be more successful.
So if you weren't making art, you could make art.
Right. If I wasn't like setting out to make a sculpture and I was making a lamp, or telling myself I was just making a lamp, it seemed to work better. And then of course you could always just go, later go back to calling it sculpture again, or it doesn't really matter, really. Like in some cases it's sculpture, in some cases it's a lamp.
So how would you tell the difference between a sculpture and a lamp, if the sculpture is a lamp?
Well, it's not a matter of them being one thing or the other. It's kind of like contextual partly, or what the person looking at it wants it to be. They're not exclusive, it's kind of like you have this thing, and it could be a lamp, or it could be a sculpture, or it could be both simultaneously.
So you're making these paintings, and like how did you come to the conclusion to just kind of be, I guess, comfortable in your own skin and do what you wanted to do? Was there like a first piece that was sort of like a breakthrough piece for you?
I guess I did some things in graduate school where I stopped using brushes and paint, but I was still working with kind of traditional painting structures. So I had these stretchers made that were kind of exaggerated sculptural forms, but related to the paintings I was making. They were square, they were a certain thickness, but I kind of just exaggerated the objectness of them, and I started stretching. I just go buy fabric at a fabric store and stretch it over this form and then call it done. And they were sort of thought of them as like painting surrogates, but so they kind of had some attributes of a painting, but they weren't really what you would traditionally call a painting. And they were kind of more towards sculpture, and then they also kind of looked like chair cushions, so they kind of suggested furniture to me in a way. So I think those were kind of important kind of transitional works to like, well, why not just make it a cushion if it kind of looks like a cushion, or,
Instead of it being like an actual painting, why can't it actually be a painting that looks like a cushion? Why can't it just be a cushion?
Yeah, so then I made, collaboratively with Stuart Netsky, we made these pillows. It, for me, kind of came out of those paintings that sort of suggested cushions, but then they just literally became pillows.
When you're making this early work, and there are people like telling you that, fine art couldn't be something that matched the couch, or it couldn't be something that was necessarily functional. Did you have a lot of like backlash or criticism at the beginning?
I mean, not particularly. I mean, when the painting school at Tyler, when I was in grad school, was very kind of open to, people just making what they wanted to make. So of the people, there were like 5 people graduated my year. None of us were really making straight paintings by the time we got out of there, but they were still fine with, talking to us about what we were doing. I mean, I think another thing that was, to go back to the earlier question, that transitional work, or what was kind of a turning point, was the same fabric that I was buying to stretch on the painting chassis, I also realized I could just kind of stretch it up on the wall and cover walls as if it was wallpaper. So it was kind of the idea of, if I think of these painting sculpture things as sort of characters, then making an environment where these objects could belong. And also, I was kind of drawn to things that were possibly in poor taste or ugly slightly or a little bit flamboyant, and thinking about like making a context where these things would sort of not stick out as unusual because the context was more flamboyant or ugly.
That's kind of interesting to me. I read in your for the Flowers of Romance at the ICA, which you did in the ramp project there.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote up in the write-up in it that that rather than experience reverence and inspect, the Flowers of Romance invokes laughter and a creepy, crawly sense of beaded beauty and funhouse antics. I mean, to me, what you do in your work is more elevating the kitsch to the kind of this place where you can't laugh at it anymore. Do you feel like your work is, I mean, there's humor there, but how humorous do you feel your work is?
I mean, I don't mean it to be, you know, ha-ha funny. And I mean, a lot of times I get somewhat irritated if people like talk about too much about that aspect. I mean, I like that there's humor in the work because I don't really like work that doesn't have some kind of emotional range. But you know, I don't think of the work primarily as funny, or if it is funny, I want it to be the sort of nervous laughter of something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, or
So you, it's not like necessarily like you're making this great big joke. It's, I mean, to me, I feel like you really love all this stuff that's in there, like macrame and all this stuff from the 70s. Like, you actually like it. Do you?
Well, I do and I don't. And I mean, it's partly about, for me, I think, you know, it's the stuff I grew up with. So if I don't have some affection for it or some kind of respect for it, it's kind of like hating a part of yourself.
Yeah.
I think initially I would talk about, I was trying to be really adamant I wasn't making fun of these things I was using in the work or kind of incorporating, but I'm not sure that I was entirely successful, and that maybe there was part of me that was sort of wanting, you know, not wanting to, but still kind of mocking it in a way. And I think it was like a matter of kind of working with it for a number of years. Part of the project was to try to get rid of that kind of, the kind of snobbery of taste, or to really try to make something that I really did think was kind of ugly or kind of tasteless, to really try to make it so that I could see it really as beautiful, or transform it into something that really became beautiful and not just sort of like a campy joke. It was like to try to get away from the camp aspect, which I think is more prevalent in earlier work. I think finally, with like the chandeliers in the silver room, which are still kind of the same cheap materials and, you know, allude to kind of Spencer Gifts materials and posters and things. I think finally that was the work that I felt like I couldn't deny that I found it really beautiful.
No, I think at the end it is beautiful, and that's what's amazing is there's macrame on mylar and these chandeliers that are just beautiful, but they kind of also, if you think about the imagery, bring to mind something you'd see at like, I don't know, roadside eatery or something. But just together, it's this beautiful like decadence that I think really gets across.